Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. To our respected lecturer, Professor Dr. Hairuddin bin Muhammad Ali, and all my fellow friends. Today, we would like to present our next chapter, Decision Making in School. Before we start the presentation, let me introduce our group members. Our team members consist of 5 members. The first presenter is going to be me, Saiful Japar. The second presenter is Naziha binti Khalid. The third presenter is Sharizan binti Azarai. The fourth presenter is Wan Muhammad Alif Afifi bin Wan Muhammad Fauzi. And the fifth or the last presenter is Najwa binti Muhammad Ramli. Here's several objectives of the presentation. The first is to explain the classical model and the administrative model in decision making. Second, to explain the process of decision making in leaderships. The third is understanding 5 models used in decision making. Fourth, to explain Jainism conflict theory in decision making. And fifth, to relate decision making in Islamic perspective. These are the overall contents of our presentation. As you can see, there are 9 subtopics that we will cover throughout this rendition. Decision making is a major responsibility of all administration, but until decisions are converted into action, they are only good intentions. Our analysis begins with an examination of classical model and the administrative model. Classical decision theory assumes that decisions should be completely rational. It employs an optimizing strategy by seeking the best possible alternatives to maximize the achievement of goals and objectives. According to the classical model, the decision-making process is a series of sequential steps. The first step is problem is defined. Second, goals and objectives are established. Third, all the possible alternatives are generated. Fourth, the consequences of each alternatives are considered. Fifth, all the alternatives are evaluated in terms of the goals and objectives. Six, the best alternative is selected, that is, the one that maximizes the goals and objectives. And the seven, finally, the decision is implemented and evaluated. The administrative model, given the severe limitation of the classical model, it should not be surprising that more realistic conceptual approaches to decision-making in organization have evolved. Herbert Simon, 1947, was the first to introduce the administrative models. The basic approach is satisficing, that is, finding a satisfactory solution rather the best one. Satisfying strategy in detail is a sequential steps. The first step is recognize and define the problem. The second, analyze the difficulties. Third, establish criteria for a satisfactory solution. Fourth, develop a plan of action. And the fifth is initiate action plan. Next, we examine the basic assumption upon which the model rests. The first assumption is administrative decision making is a dynamic process that solves some organizational problems and create others. Specific decisions that foster the achievement of the organization proposes frequently interfere with other conditions that are also important. Second assumption is complete rationality in decision making is impossible. Therefore, administrators seek to satisfy because they have neither the ability nor the cognitive capacity to optimize the decision making process. Thus, administrators seek to satisfy rather than optimize. Why? Because optimize is the best decision, satisfy is good enough, bounded rationality is the best of narrow set of alternatives. The third assumption is decision making is a general pattern of action found in the rational administration of all major tasks and function areas in organization. The fourth assumption is values are an integral part of the decision making. Decisions are not value-free. Values and moral choice of critical and systematic and deliberate decision-making.
Assalamualaikum to all. I am Naziha Khalid, the second presenter. I will be talking about decision-making process cycle. In leadership, decision-making is one of the crucial actions that need to be done by a leader. In fact, a leader will be making a lot of decisions in his entire career, and his or her decision will determine the success or failure of the organization. That is why decision making is never easy and should not be taken lightly. So many things need to be considered before making those decisions. Here are guides that could help leaders in order to make a decision. There is a process that needs to be done in decision making, and it can be explained through this step-by-step chart. First step is to recognize difficulty or disharmony in a system. A good leader is someone who is able to sense something wrong in his organization. They must also be able to acknowledge that it is normal to have problems, but it is wrong to give excuses or also invalid reason for it. The two guides for recognizing problem in an organization is to first define the immediate problem and then define the long-term problem. Second step is to analyze the difficulties in the existing situation. Analyzing the problem is almost similar with recognizing problems, but the act is more detailed and classified. Analyzing problem can determine whether it leads to a generic decision or unique decision as proposed by Peter F. Drucker in 1966. Generic decision arises from established principles, policies, or rules and usually had happened before, and the organization has established mechanisms and procedures for dealing with the problem. While unique decision is made because of certain issues or problems that rarely occur or not adequately answered by a general principle or rule, and probably need creative decision that goes beyond established procedure or required a modification such as organizational structure. Once the problem has been classified as generic or unique, the administrator is in a position to address a number of other questions. This entails the needs for specific information and relevant facts. Step 3 is to establish criteria for a satisfactory solution. After the problem has been analyzed and specified, the decision maker must decide what constitutes an acceptable solution. At this point, the decision maker needs to list down possible outcomes that will bring maximum satisfactory in both the short-term and long-term outcomes. The criteria used to judge the decision should also be consistent with the organization mission. Step 4 is the most critical stage of decision making, that is, developing a plan or strategy of action. There are 4 basic steps that need to be done in planning a strategy. First, a decision maker needs to list down all available alternatives that the organization have. Next is to predict the consequences of each alternative. Third is to deliberate all the alternatives, and lastly is to select the best course of action to be taken. The last step of decision making is initiating the plan of action. Once the decision has been made and a plan of action has been formulated, the decision needs to be implemented. This stage requires at least 4 steps: programming, communicating, monitoring, and appraising. After implementation, there is a stage of evaluation. Even the most carefully conceived and executed decision can fail. So it is important to evaluate the outcome so that the improvement can be done in future. All 5 steps in decision making may be occurring simultaneously and can also be repeated again before a conclusive decision are made in the final. That is all from me now. I will pass the floor to Sister Sharizan at Zarai.
Assalamualaikum and good day to all. My name is Sharizan and I am presenting the incremental model, a strategy to successive limited comparison, and the mid-scanning model, and adaptive strategy. Okay, now we move on to the incremental model, a strategy of successive limited comparison. Charles Limblom first introduced and formalized the incremental strategy. This method of deciding as the science of modeling true, and the process is best described as method of successive limited comparison. The process used while employing the incremental model of decision making is often referred to as the method of successive limited comparison. The incremental model of decision making analyzes differences between the current state and proposed outcome. Then Charles Limblom described the way most decisions are made as the process of modeling true. Number 1, a small and limited set of opinions are considered. Number 2, options are only marginally different from existing situation. Number 3, options are considered by comparing actual consequences. Number 4, try the option and then observe consequences. Number 5, if consequences are fine, then a little more. Number 6, if consequences are negative, then back off and try something different. And last one, focus outcomes and trial and error. Then educational leaders who focus upon a reasonable set of alternatives on the basis of their experience are able to make prediction of outcomes with accuracy and confidence. This incremental decision making has its limitation. It is a time to narrow and specify. Next is the mid-scanning model and adaptive strategy. This approach is actually a synthesis of the behavioral and the incremental models. This mid-scanning involves two questions. Number 1, what is the organization mission and policy? Number 2, what decision will move the organization toward its mission and policy? This question forces leaders to continue to question to move organization towards and not away from mission. Mid-scanning is a combination of the administrative model and the mid-scanning model. It comes from theory, experience, and successive comparison used together. Educational leaders examine data that is both of slight importance as well as data that is deeply entrenched in their school's culture. Now we move to principle of mid-scanning. These are 7 keys to successful implementation of the mid-scanning. Number 1, use focus, trial and error, which is search for reasonable alternative, select, implement and test, adjust and modify as the outcomes become clear. Number 2, be tentative, proceed with caution, which is view decision as part of a continuous process, not a terminal end. Respond positively to changing condition. Remain tentative in making decision. Change given a set of unforeseeable circumstances at the time. Number 3, if uncertain, procrastinate, which is do not make a decision that result in a worse outcome than if a decision were not made in the first place. If additional time is needed, explain to others the importance of this additional time. A delay to collect and analyze more information before taking action is crucial. Okay, next, number 4, stagger your decision in stages. By revealing your decision in stages, educational leader will be able to evaluate the outcome of each decision before proceeding to the next revelation. Number 5, if uncertain, fractionalize your decision, which is allow the usage of partial resources until the consequences are satisfactory. Number 6, hedge your bets, which is treating each alternative as an investment, make adjustment on the basis of the gains, and then educational leader are able to maximize their gains. And number 7, be prepared to reverse your decision, which is position yourself in the decision that you make to be able to rescind, reverse, and improve your decision again when additional information is known. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Wan Muhammad Alif Afifi bin Wan Muhammad Fauzi. So today inshallah I will be presenting the contingency model, a matching strategy and situation. So from all of the type of decision making that have been presented before, which one is the best model? The answer is there is nothing such as the best model in decision making. Why? Because in decision making, you need to understand the situation and then choose the most appropriate method or the most suitable method to make the decision. And this is what we call as contingency model. Alright, so how to select the correct approach for decision making? First, we need to look at the information. We need to have enough information to ensure a good result. Second, we need to decide the time limit to make a decision. Sometimes we need to recheck all information that we have before making a decision. And sometimes if there is a time limit, we need to recheck only a related information before we make the decision. And the third one is to understand how important is the decision is. The more important the decision is, the more information and time is needed to make a proper decision. So from all three things that I mentioned before, it will guide you to a path of decision strategy where we have satisficing, adaptive satisficing, truncated satisficing, truncated adaptive satisficing, and modeling. And all of this will be related to the information, the time, and the importance of decision making that we have. So you can understand by look at the right side of the slide where I already present or put a picture over there. You can see that the decision opportunity, do you have enough information? Yes or no? Do you have enough time? Yes or no? Or is the decision is important? Yes or no? So from all of that, you can make the decision making strategy. Which one is related to the decision that you need to make? Next is the garbage can model. So sometimes individuals or organization, we need to act or do something which there is no good reason for it. It's not always, not even usually, but sometimes happen. And this is what we call as a garbage can model. According to Cohen, March and Olsen, 1972, garbage can model can mean an unclear process in decision making that sometimes will destroy the relationship or the harmony in a certain organization. In brief, we can understand that garbage can model have these four features. First, an organizational objective that comes from nowhere. No one knows about it, but it just comes without any basis. Second, the decision process is not begin with a problem and it does not end with a solution, but it happened by a chance. Third, the problem is able to be solved when it matches with the already existed solution. Fourth, the rationality in decision making is rarely happen. So in a simple way, we can understand that garbage can model is a decision that happen by chance, and it is not happen by a suggestion for an action to solve the problem in the organization.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today I'm going to talk about Janice Mann conflict theory. stress and irrationality in decision making. Okay, regardless of which decision-making strategy is employed, the pressures of the situation and the decision-making process itself often produce stress. So, Irving Janis and Leon Mann in 1977 have developed an insightful model of conflict that answers the following two questions. Question 1. Under what conditions does stress have unfavorable effects on the quality of decision making? And question 2. Under what conditions will individuals use sound decision making procedures to avoid choices that they would quickly regret? Okay, people handle psychological stress in different ways as they make vital decisions. The main sources of such stress in decision making are the fear of failure, worry about unknown consequences, concern about making a public fool of oneself, and losing self-esteem if the decision is disastrous, according to Janis, 1985. So critical decisions usually involve conflicting values, which people face the unsettling dilemma that any choice they make. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Okay, this slide shows a figure of how Chinese man conflict model in decision making works. Okay, so all of you can look at the figure. Okay, the chart. This chart is adapted with the permission of the Free Press, a division of Simon Schuster Adult Publishing Group. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Okay, now this slide is a Islamic management decision process for Muslim leaders and managers. So, according to Islamic perspective, there are 3 additional steps for Muslims leaders. Okay, so after the ongoing process of identifying problems, identifying decision criteria, allocating weight to criteria, developing alternative, analyzing alternative, selecting alternative, okay, implementing chosen alternative, and evaluating decision effectiveness. Okay, there are 3 extra steps, okay, which involve first consultation with experts, scholars and etc. After which followed by solah istikharah, which is seeking guidance from Allah. Okay, and the last is solah hajah, which is putting absolute trust to Allah. Okay, Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala has said in the Quran, okay, which translated into, and consult them in the affairs. Then, when you have taken a decision, put your trust in Allah. Certainly, Allah loves those who put their trust in Him. Okay, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam bersabda in Malay, tiada sia-sia mereka yang memohon keredaan Allah dalam urusan mereka. Tiada penyesalan mereka yang bermesyuarat dalam urusan mereka, dan tiada tewas mereka yang tahu berjimat cermat. Okay, so according to Islamic perspective, okay, the 3 concepts plays a very important role. Okay, after in the process of making a good decision. Okay, everything revolve around Allah's decision, which to Him we seek guidance. Okay, that will be all from me. Thank you.
Key assumptions and principles. The first is Administration use a satisficing model of decision making because they have neither the ability nor capacity to optimize the decision process. Second is, decision making is an ongoing process that solves some problems and creates others. The third is, values are an integral part of making decision. Fourth is, decision making is a general pattern of action found in the rational administration tasks and function in all organizations. Fifth, an incremental model of decision making, modeling through, is a popular but limited framework for organizational decision making. Six, a mixed scanning perspective of decision making, adaptive satisficing, combines the best of the incremental in satisficing models. 7. There is no one best decision making strategy or models. 8. Appropriate decision strategy depends upon sufficient information, sufficient time, and the importance of decisions. 9th, the garbage can model of decision making advises organization to search the recycling bin for the discard solution that may be appropriate for future problems. And the final is the number 10, psychological stress increase poorly conceived and implemented decisions. That's all from our groups. Thank you for your attention. Don't forget to write your critiques and feedback. And the most important is, be a good decision maker. Thank you.